Why is this happening? And where is this taking us? What is this spiritual evolution that is happening? The planet is vibrating at a higher level. We are beginning to vibrate at a higher level. Our bodies are beginning to accommodate these higher vibrational energies and whatnot. But why? Where are we going? And so many people within our circles, our consciousness and metaphysical and whatnot, speak of the term ascension, and it's been confused quite a bit, especially when referred to in a spiritual sense. Ascension can mean different things to many people. For me, the literal definition of ascension is the act of ascending, to ascend, to rise, to climb. Um, the idea and concept of ascension is easily explained in different contexts depending on on your spiritual tradition or philosophy. Um, Many people, I remember several years ago, and it was kind of turned into like a comedy thing where people were talking about the rapture. Oh, was this the ascension? We're going to be raptured up, and we're just all going to float up to heaven or whatnot. And as many saw, nothing happened that day. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but I remember that there was this thing where people were putting clothes out on the lawn to make it look like they had disappeared or something like that. And I thought it was a little bit cute, but that's not what this means. That's not what ascension is. Ascension is very close to enlightenment, as a matter of fact. Spiritually speaking, it's similar to the Eastern concept of enlightenment that the Buddhists speak about. To become enlightened can simply mean to have full comprehension of a situation. We also use the term illumination, to become illuminated. And no, I'm not talking about the Illuminati. I'm talking about the good guys here, us, human beings. Those of us that are here to be a part of humanity. The illumination is also the ascension, illuminated with clarity, illuminated to a higher vibration. To become illuminated is a spiritual revelation. It's an insight into the meaning of all things. Enlightenment is also the same thing, that connection to the all, that communication or understanding of your mind of source, where you come from, your connection to the source, your higher self. It's a profound spiritual understanding that changes everything in your consciousness. It changes your perceptions. It changes your connections to the world around you. It is a moment of clarity, to put it simply. But also, in a very basic sense, we can look at it as ascension being the highest state that we can vibrate at, or the highest state that man or humanity can be at. It's the highest mystical awareness that humanity can be at. It is the expansion of awareness. This, for me, this means a realization of being one with your creator, the creation of all life, being one with your higher self being that connection to the all, your higher self being that piece of source that is a part of who you are. This individual ascending, in a sense that something of a lower vibration is ascending. We're being raised up to become higher in vibration. So many spiritual traditions are based in this. The aim of many spiritual traditions is to achieve, the dissolvement or the dissolution of the human ego, the lower self, the animal self, the reptilian self, in order so that we can realize our true nature and be in that being of high vibration, to be that being that is what we consider our higher self. So ascension is not about going somewhere else. It's not about leaving the planet. It's not about walking through a portal. It's not about the Galactic Federation coming down and sucking you up through a light into their mothership and you're transported to another dimension where everything is blue and sparkly. No, ascension happens here, now, within you, within your physical body. There's been so much fear surrounding the idea of ascension of, oh, well, we're going to lose our physical body or we're going to become invisible and our friends won't see us. I remember, and I love this film, don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved the film, the Celestine Prophecy, and they had a great explanation of the ascension or the I don't even know how to explain the terminology, but how to transcend this particular plane. And I don't know how many people saw that movie, but there was a scene where they were in this like sacred area, and they all like raised their vibration. All of a sudden, they became invisible to the guerrillas that were chasing them. The militants that were chasing them, and because they were at this higher state of being, everything looked very different to them. The nature was more vibrant, the colors, and they felt better and whatnot. That was a pretty close visual definition of what I would consider ascension. Um, but again, I just want to just remind everybody this doesn't mean that your physical body is going to be lifted off the ground and fly through the air and, go above the clouds toward a place called heaven, and you're going to have all your virgins and your streets paved with gold and singing angels and whatnot. That's a religious belief, a symbolic one at that, which is taken too literally sometimes. But for the sake of understanding, if ascension did actually involve entering heaven without dying, let's just say for the sake of argument, kind of like the movie uh, Celestine Prophecy, let's say ascension did involve entering heaven without dying, then it would be absolutely more fair to say, more accurate to say that the ascension is about bringing heaven to earth, by raising your lower vibrational aspect of your non physical being to a higher vibrational state or realization. Let me repeat that. It is done by raising your lower vibrational aspect of your non-physical being to a higher vibrational state of being and realization. It is possible. One of my favorite quotes from Jesus Christ is, "The kingdom of heaven is upon the earth, but men choose not to see it." That's it. Heaven is on the earth. It is when we raise our lower vibrational aspect of our non physical being to a higher vibrational state of being or realization. That's when we get to see heaven upon the earth. Many people also feel that when well, actually, let me hold back on that. I want to get into some of the don'ts in a moment, but not just yet. Let me just finish up with the idea that it is easier to understand in a metaphysical way, considering the concept of ascension. We can look at it in the sense of dimensions or planes of existence or planes of consciousness. In other words, that ascension is about shifting from one dimension, one frequency, or a plane of existence, or your consciousness to another plane of frequency, of existence, of awareness, a dimension, a state of consciousness that is of a higher frequency. When you're vibrating at a higher frequency, you are going through what is called the ascension. So I hope this kind of clarifies a little bit, and to wrap it up, let me just say ascension, illumination, enlightenment, all pretty much the same, just different words, different terminology, all dealing with the same thing of raising our vibration to a much higher frequency. With that being said, let me talk about some of the things that we need to be aware of. When we are ascending, okay, when we are ascending, we're not always going to be moving forward. That's fine. You know, every once in a while, you're going to backslide. You're going to find yourself doing some old negative habits that perhaps you haven't overcome. Perhaps you're going to go into some old ways, thinking patterns that are not necessarily of that higher vibrational quality. But what I will say is the key to this. The key to this is to not deny your humanity. I feel it's very, very important that we allow room for our humanity. We allow room for what some people call the shadow self. These are, I don't want to say reminders, but they're almost like markers of work that still needs to be done. They're reminders and markers that they're, in order for you to truly move on, if you want to say clearing your old karma or healing from old traumas, etc., etc., those moments of, let's say, anger, depression, anxiety, um, etc., etc., these moments are an opportunity to finish up some work that needs to be done. Remember, the ascension process is not a one straight line moving up, you know, into this high vibration mentality. It's not. It's a very personal, and it's a very how shall I say, individual way of moving forward. And if that means that you have not gotten over your, let's say, insecurities of being left alone, a lot of people can't stand being alone. They don't like being quiet. They can't be left with their thoughts. Well, that's definitely going to be an issue for someone who is vibrating at a higher frequency. If you can't be alone with your thoughts, you obviously do not have the ability to focus, meditate, and to create or intend, et cetera, et cetera. So this needs to be worked on. Even though you feel you're going great, you're moving forward, all of a sudden you catch yourself and you're like, oh, wow, it's really quiet. Someone put on the TV or someone put on some music. I don't like, you know, silence. I don't want to be alone with my thoughts. That's something that needs to be worked on. It's not to be denied. I had a very upsetting, for me, upsetting, personally upsetting email yesterday. Someone had written me saying that the conversation I had with Laura Eisenhower about the shadow self, actually, that no, you can't focus on the shadow. You need to only focus on the good and look to the good, because what you focus on is what you create. And I agree. I absolutely agree. But it's also not being in denial of work that needs to be done. You know, the idea that, you know, oh, you cut yourself or you're bleeding. Oh, well, that's not happy. I'm not going to pay attention to. Of course, you have to pay attention to that. Of course, you've got to bandage it up. Of course, you've got to give it healing. You've got to give it medicine, et cetera, et cetera. When you're injured, you're not going to ignore that injury. And the same thing goes with your emotional life. If you have an emotional injury, you must allow the process of healing to take place. Living in denial that there is emotional turmoil in your life, living in denial that you are, oh, I don't know, narcissistic or are an overeater or are a drug addict, whatever it may be, whatever is causing emotional harm to yourself, living in denial is not the way to ascension. Living in denial is not the way to be able to vibrate at a higher frequency. Yeah, sure. You can vibrate at a higher frequency for short periods of time, but that injury, that emotional injury, that baggage, as some people call it, is going to rear its ugly head somehow, some way, and it will manifest either as a physical illness, an emotional illness, nightmares, you name it. It is going to show its ugly head. You must be brave enough, take responsibility enough to work through these emotional injuries with courage and with the knowing and the understanding that you are going to get through it. Your depression, your addictions, your overeating, your whatever it is very minuscule compared to the wholeness of who you are. It is only an imbalance in a particular aspect of your energetic body that needs to have a little, how should we say? I want to say removing the obstacle of that energetic, that area of your energy body. There's an obstacle there. There's a blockage, and you must allow for the healing of that particular blockage in order to create balance and allow the energy to flow. So if anyone tells you that focusing on the negative is not the way to ascension, I agree. You're not supposed to focus on the negative, but you are not to live in denial of any emotional injuries that you may have. With that being said, and darn, I went on a little bit too long with this. I hope I have enough time today to talk about everything I have written down here, because the next step is the ascension of the planet. The next step is to acknowledge that through our spiritual awareness, the more that we are aligning with our spiritual true selves, our higher selves, social responsibility becomes a part of that. Because as your awareness elevates, as your vibration gets higher, you can't help but notice the injustices around the world. You can't help but notice the poverty. You can't help but notice through your compassion, your elevated, sensitive idea and feeling of what compassion and justice is. It would be like living in denial that something wrong is going on in Gaza, that something wrong is going on in the United States with poverty, that something is wrong around the world with so many having so much. I mean, so little having so much, and so many having so little. There is a social responsibility that comes along with this. And I'm going to try to help you get through some of this. It can be very overwhelming. I've had people move into states of depression, moving into states of addiction, feeling suicidal because they're overwhelmed at this point. That when we get to this point of clarity, when we get to this point of compassion, of empathy, of understanding that we are all one, and then when we are all one and a part of our family is hurting, we begin to take it personally. And it's important for us to understand we can only do what we can do. Yes, we cannot live in denial. I agree. I agree that we don't need to focus on every single brutality in the planet. It'd be impossible. I've tried it. You can ask my co-host Triva. Everything from chemtrails to GMOs to Gaza to the water situation to air pollution to everything, the BP oil spill. I mean, there's just so much. There's constantly something, some injustice. The Amazon rainforest. Hunting of lions. You name it. There is something that there is injustice all over the planet. There is injustice all over the planet. That's the reality of the world that we now have to take responsibility for. Did you get that? We now that we have evolved to that state of a higher being, of a higher vibration, it is now our duty to accept the fact that it is through our own creation that we are living in the world that we live in. We're going to get into that in just a minute. But to take responsibility is going to be the next key. I am responsible for this world outside of me. I am not only responsible for the world within me, I am responsible for the world that I have participated in and allowed to manifest as such around me. Everyone's going, what are you talking about? It's my fault that children are starving in Africa. It's my fault. Well, there are multiple ways of looking at it. And again, we've only got a minute or two on this segment, so I don't want to go too much into this. Let me leave a note on where we left off, self responsibility, and we're going to get back to this after this particular break, because I'm going to go on for a few more minutes here on this particular topic, self-responsibility of the outer world. And I'll explain to you why you are responsible, because you are, and I'll leave you with this for this particular segment, because you're an amazing, infinite, powerful being. And it is your thoughts that created the world around you, and still does, and still will. And we'll get all into that in just a few minutes after the break.